Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 8th, 2019 Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting. We actually have a couple of action items on the agenda tonight, even though it's an education meeting. So before we get started, I'd like to take public comment on action items only from tonight's agenda. There'll be opportunity at the end of the meeting for public comment on any issue. So if you would like to comment on the action items, please come sign in with Ms. LaPera. Is there anyone who would like to do so? On an action item, Sam?
Sure, yeah. Human resources is action, right?
Yes, it is.
Hi, I'm Sam Catania. I live in Haverford. I'd just like to congratulate Mrs. Stout on her new position as principal of BC. I think she's a great pick, and congratulations and good luck moving forward. That's all.
Thank you, Sam. That was very nice. Okay. I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
Okay. Under HR, it is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of School Directors approve the attached personnel action reclassifying Mrs. Sarah Stout to principal of the Bala-Cynwyd Middle School effective June 19th, 2019.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Then the motion passes. Congratulations. And we are absolutely thrilled to welcome you into this new position. So
Before we ask Sarah to say a few words, I'd just like to summarize briefly, and the board has heard me say this, and I mentioned it to the teachers and the parents at Bala-Cynwyd. I've been involved as a central office administrator hiring principals since 1995. This pool of candidates was by far the strongest pool of candidates that we had, and so to have an internal candidate rise to the top, I think says a lot about the school district and the candidate. I'd also like to thank all of the folks who have worked on that process, and I also appreciate the attendance of Jeff Hunter, assistant principal of Bala-Cynwyd Middle School, for coming to support Sarah this evening. So with that, Sarah, would you have a few words, please?
Thank you very much. Mr. Copeland, and to the Board of Directors, thank you so much for this opportunity. To realize a dream of mine in this district is pretty incredible, so thank you for this opportunity. I'm fortunate to have an incredible team of colleagues that have been very supportive through this process, and to know that I'm in a position to start a job with a group of incredibly talented educational leaders, eager and excited to support me and us in this endeavor is really comforting. I especially want to thank Dr. Eveslag, Ms. Schaefer, and Ms. Frazier. You guys are people I lean on, and you listen and you offer advice, and we're lucky to have you, and I know that I'm lucky to have you. Jeff, you and I have known each other for even before we started working together, and I think we had an opportunity before we started working together, and we were immediately in a room and impressed with one another, which is not something that happens often. So we're going to be an incredible team. So thank you. To my Welsh Valley family that has been always supportive. Thank you to Becky, who's here to support me tonight. That's a surprise and really awesome. My Uncle Brian, my husband Chris, my daughter Caroline, and my mom, you guys are my rocks, and to have such an amazing family that pushes me, is always proud of me, and is always there to support me to make sure I can realize everything I try to do. This doesn't happen alone, and it happens with you. So thank you to everyone for this opportunity, and have a great evening.
So It's really wonderful to have you all here, but I know it's a school night, and everybody has to get up and either go to school or work, so we will not be insulted if you decide to continue the celebration. Of course, you're more than welcome to stay as well, so.
Game doesn't
Okay.
start till 4, it's 9, but that's all right. All right, we have another motion. The administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the lease agreement subject to solicitor review for the kindergarten wraparound program with Right at School in the amount of $72,500 for the 2019-2020 school year. Just by way of clarification, that's what they're paying us. So that's, okay, yes.
That obviously good clarification. So would it be possible maybe for just to say a little bit about what this is, provide a little bit of context for our families?
So Right at School is the new before and after school developer. Because we have a half-day program, we have traditionally been able to provide transportation services for our families, so our families will be able to go back and forth between our current locations, our current campuses. And they were looking for a place, were having difficulty finding a place, thought they found a place at Beth David, ran into some issues with zoning, and so we were able to find some space here at the district administration offices. So that's the general context.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Then the motion passes. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Copeland.
So as is our practice, this time or about this time every year, we like to report on the strategic planning process. I'm going to ask Dr. Everslide to give that presentation this evening. While he's making his way to the podium, let me just say that this is, I think, I'll talk about it afterward. I'm just really pleased that we were able to get some of the things set up that we have this year, and looking forward to hearing your response. So, Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Strategic Plan leadership team, Ms. Megan Schaefer, Mr. Mike Johnson, I'm pleased to share with you an update on our work this year on the strategic plan and provide us some focus on where we are now and where we hope to be soon. As you're aware, the strategic plan has been organized via 5 pathways. We have leadership of each of the 5 pathways that have been not only instrumental in our day-to-day decision-making and day-to-day action, but helping us plan a vision for the future. So we have our transformative curriculum, which is led by Dr. Leslie Pratt, secondary humanities supervisor. Our student-driven schools pathway, which is led by Bala Kenwood principal, Ms. Sarah Stout. You might know her. Spirit of Community pathway, which is led by Ms. Amy Buckman, our Director of Community Relations. Commitment to Professional Learning pathway, which is led by Mr. Brian Cody, Director of Curriculum and Professional Learning. And our Redefining Success pathway, which is led by Mr. Sean Hughes, Lower Merion High School principal. But I will say all of our administrators are connected to pathways and explorations within those pathways. And one of our goals this year was to channel our energy along with gathering additional support from our teachers and professional staff to really focus our strategic plan work in what we are calling focus explorations. As you may recall, our strategic plan was organized via pathways. We had multiple explorations. In fact, we had around 40 explorations that we were looking into, many of which have taken form and are operating smoothly in pockets of the district. Some examples of those are like Genius Hour, for example, which has been a great success, but it's not. It's operating in certain buildings and certain grade levels. It's not an exploration that at this point has been brought to scale. It may at some point be, but what we did this year is focus our work around Explorations which we consider to be high leverage strategic plan initiatives that we think are going to really positively impact the student experience. So these have been explorations, but we're taking all the people that are working on these other explorations and kind of focus our energies on these 9 things. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about each and update you on progress and vision for each of these 9 explorations. The 9 explorations, focus explorations, each originated from a pathway. Strictly for organizational purposes, we're kind of going to go left to right, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of update on where the pathway originated, what it is, and where it's going. With each of the pathways, we have established what we're calling objectives and key results. Our academic leadership team read a book called Measure What Matters over the summer, and one of the things that talked about that really resonated with us, especially with strategic planning, is that we really need to have objectives to help us clearly know where we're going to go, whether there's inspiration for our vision. And underneath those objectives, establish key results. And the key results are going to be more actionable. They're going to help quantify that inspirational language and that vision. And they're considered stretch goals, but key results are specific and time-bound, aggressive yet realistic, and measurable and verifiable. And within those key results, there are several action items that each exploration is working on. Action items are going to lead to key results, are going to help us get to the objective. So you have to trust me that they exist for each of the explorations. We're not going to dive into all of the nitty-gritty details of each of them, but they have been crafted in a way to help us move forward and help us monitor our progress. So our first focus exploration is digital portfolios. Digital portfolios originated from the transformative curriculum pathway, but certainly has connections to student-driven schools and redefining success. And so when you think about what a digital portfolio is and how it can change what the student experience is, start by thinking of what a traditional portfolio may look like. Manila folder, your student work is gathered, teacher puts several pieces of items of artifacts of student work, it's passed on grade to grade. The next teacher gets to know a little bit about what the student work looks like. The digital portfolio does everything that the traditional portfolio would do, but is much more interactive and much more student-centered. And the digital portfolios allow the students to be to tell their own academic stories. They are ones who choose their what goes into the portfolio. The work that goes into the portfolio, there are many opportunities to interact with other members of the school community. So with the digital portfolio, the audience can be the parent, the audience could be fellow classmates, the audience could be the teacher, or all of those. And there's opportunities for feedback from all of those members, or none, or it could just be an opportunity to store student work. But the power of the digital portfolio is allowing the student to tell his or her story over time. They talk about how they're assessing their own work. They're much more engaged in owning that work, and there's an ownership piece that's accomplished through digital portfolios. We happen to be using Seesaw right now, and that's been a very successful platform for us, but the digital portfolios is not the platform. The digital portfolio is the vision. Seesaw just happens to be the platform currently that we're using. It's being piloted by teachers at all 3 levels, but most heavily by elementary level teachers. And our key results for the digital portfolios is following a timeline similar to our report cards. So this year, our elementary report cards are being implemented by grades 3, 4, and 5. 4th grade started last year, 3, 4, and 5 is this year. And the digital portfolios are going to be about a year behind that. So next year, all of our 3, 4, and 5 teachers will have access to the portfolios. All students in those grades will have access to the portfolios, and there'll be some expectations and guidelines for how students can engage with the portfolios and how they can assume that level of ownership. And then we have a longer-term plan for grades to follow. After 3-5, we'll go K2 the following year, and then transition to middle schools and then high. But we do, in the meantime, have teachers piloting at all 3 levels. Our second exploration also originated from the transformative curriculum, and we're calling it residencies. Residencies is very much connected to the spirit of community and redefining success. And we're thinking of residencies as taking an aspect of our curriculum and leveraging the rich resources of the community to enhance that experience for students. So, for example, we think that the connections and the relationships that we can form with these organizations are going to really have a profound impact on student learning through some experiential learning. So they will be relationships with outside groups that every student would have access to. For example, we have Megan Schaefer, Amy Buckman, and the 7th grade teacher middle school teacher Kevin DeSantis from Ballard Canwood, who's our middle school social studies content lead, visited the African American Museum in Philadelphia. And we're developing a relationship with them that connects not only the current curriculum, but ways for students to engage with the expertise at the museum, but also have people from the museum join us here, and multiple ways that we can interface with that to enhance the whole curricular experience. But bringing the goal of the residency is not only leveraging community resources, but bringing it to scale. So every student in a particular grade would have that experience. They'd have opportunities to engage here in school and have a field trip component. So we're in conversations with and planning with the African American Museum in Philadelphia, the Barnes for a residency with the Barnes through looking through social studies and sciences and arts. And we're also discussing a relationship with Junior Achievement, who comes in and works with high school students on financial literacy and how that can supplement and support our program as well. So all of these are in the developmental stages, but we do, as an upcoming key result, expect to have a guaranteed residency with a field trip component in place by the fall of 2019. Our third focus exploration is homework. And you might say homework is not new, it's not revolutionary, there's nothing that's actually overwhelmingly exciting about homework in general. I would argue with that, because if we do homework well and do it as we should, we have an opportunity to engage students much more meaningfully and purposefully. So homework comes from the student-driven schools pathway and really emerged as a high priority need as a result of the Challenge Success Survey. So we got a lot of great information from our Challenge Success Survey from both our students, our parents. It's generated great dialogue, and a high leverage need from that has been the need to really refine and improve our homework practices. And we took Challenge Success, the results, and said, what can we as a school control? What do we have an opportunity to really self-assess, assess, and improve? And we have a vision of tailoring homework practices so that each student's needs are met, accounting for their learning, their social, their socioeconomic, emotional, and developmental needs. That's ambitious, but objectives are supposed to be ambitious, and we do want to change our homework practices. So we have a team that's working to really dive into research and also look at best policies and practices elsewhere. They're getting together with teams by level. So there's an elementary team, there's a middle school team, and a high school team, and we're going to putting together recommended homework practices, both do's and don'ts, by level for the winter of 2019 that we hope to embed into our everyday practice and part of our professional learning for new teachers. And as we're going through the process of upgrading units, revising curriculum, and looking at what homework could look like, we're revising those practices using the new guidance that's been formed. One thing that we did this year that's been really meaningful and generated some good energy around this is teachers at all levels in every building have engaged in homework reflection activities about looking at their own homework, taking examples, thinking about kind of a protocol on how you would assess the quality of your homework, how meaningful it is, how clear is it, is the purpose clear to both the teacher and the student, how much time would it take, what level of parent support would it need, how are you grading it, these things that help teachers to look at their own practices, but also help refine them. And what came out was, people saying, I've been doing this, and I think I can do this better. And through that collaboration, we're refining those practices. Homework's one of those things that's deeply embedded in the culture and is going to take time to change. But I think the clear guidance is a good key result that's going to generate some high leverage needs. Connected to that is our next focus exploration, which is challenge success. And as referenced, the Challenge Success Survey originated from student-driven schools. And we originally sought the Challenge Success Survey as a means to systematically gather student voice. So we had an opportunity to survey all students in the middle schools. We had a high return and high level of involvement, and that's given us some really great information. It's generated some good dialogue amongst students and staff, and it's allowed us, similar to the homework example, to think about our sphere of influence as a school and how we can help our students not only change our culture, but help them become learners who are not only academically prepared, but more healthy, motivated, independent, critical thinkers. One of the things that Challenge Success talks about is this idea of students doing school and kind of going through the motion of doing school without a lot of high level of engagement. So Challenge Success, from that, not only do we have a plan for how we're going to administer future surveys, we administered the student survey last year, the parent survey this fall, which we had around 60% participation, which was high. And we had some really good results from that were shared at the last curriculum committee of the board meeting. And a plan to administer the student survey again next year with some goals of some results that we expect to see with our Challenge Success survey around student engagement, around students connecting with adults in the building, around how they're feeling of happiness and well-being, things that we of course want to see improvement every year. And there's, as referenced earlier, a series of action steps that will help us get there. Another aspect of Challenge Success, this exploration, it's going to be partnering with the World Language Department for our first K-12 One Book, One LMSD initiative. So we've done One Book, One LMSD at the high school level, and then we did it at the secondary level. Now we're doing it K-12, which we're excited about. And this year's book is the Little Book of Luque, which is the secrets of, I should have had my glasses, of the world's happiest people. But it's around the notion of how students can, and adults can dive into this world of exploring their own happiness. So there are some wellness initiatives connected to that. We're excited about this. The World Language Department's done a really great job of leading this. Our next focus exploration is sleep and school start time, and that's originated from the spirit of community. The goal of this exploration is not to dive into necessarily the science or the research behind or make a recommendation itself, but rather to shepherd the process that we've already laid out in publicly and the board has approved as far as our work with gathering stakeholders to form a stakeholder group that's going to provide recommendations, informed recommendations to the board and community. So this focus exploration team is looking at communication, how we're communicating results to the broader community, how are we making sure that that stakeholders are represented. And we have invitations that have already gone out to our stakeholder group, and so we are just confirming those final steps, but that group is getting together with our consultants from Trago Ed in April and May for 3 full days that will yield a recommendation. Moving to redefining success, restorative practices has emerged as a really high priority need in the district. This actually started from the Achievement Imperative Task Force, and through the leadership of Mike Johnson and Sarah Stout, has really risen to being a prominent focus exploration for our work. Restorative practices is one of those aspects that sometimes is misrepresented when people talk about it. People talk about restorative practices being an alternative disciplinary response, and that, I say, sorely undersells what restorative practices is. Restorative practices is really about building community, and it's about building a sense of relationships both in the classroom, in your school community, where you have students feel a connection to one another and the norms of the community. that really has a positive sense of the climate and culture in the building, where students feel dignified, they feel connected to the school, and we model how that strength of community by how we respond to students if there is a violation in the community. So there is a response to misbehavior as an aspect of restorative practices, but it's really secondary to all the work that goes into building those relationships in the first place. Restorative practices really ask students questions, a few questions upon a misbehavior. They ask students what happened. They ask students what their role was in what happened. They ask students, we ask students who was impacted by your decision and how, and what you have to do to repair that. So the idea is around repairing and connection to a relationship, rather than just separating the student from the community. So throughout both schools and society, we sometimes have had an exclusionary response to misbehavior, and our first response is for a student to exit the community, as opposed to doing what we can to restore and maintain a strong community. And in the event that a student does have to be removed temporarily from the community, how we respond to welcoming that student back, which is really important, because students have to regain and restore that sense of community when they return, to make sure that the community itself remains strong. We brought in Dr. Tyrone Howard in February, who spoke to our entire staff about issues around equity. Restorative practices was part of it, but the need for a relationship-based community building, and the role of school educators and school leaders in discipline. But there's also a training piece to restorative practices, and student administrators have been trained, and assistant principals especially have been trained, but we have a team in each school that's been trained, and we have a professional learning plan on how to train, how to broaden that training for others. There's also training on how to facilitate circles, which is similar to what happens in responsive classroom at the elementary level, but facilitating circles can happen at any level, and it's a way to build community where there's a sense of everyone being a part of that same community. Part of this also is making recommendations for policy change. As referenced at the policy meeting last week, there are several policy recommendations that could come from our strategic plan work, from our work with homework to our work with restorative practices, with an emphasis on some flexibility and administrative response for violations of Policy 235, which is student rights and responsibilities. Also out of the Redefined Success pathway is the K-12 grading philosophy. So as you may recall, some of our explorations that came from the Redefined Success pathway earlier were grading related. So we looked at valedictorian, we looked at class rank, we made recommendations for some grade weighting and so forth. They were grading related. And one thing that came from that was this, as we looked at other schools and dove into research, that there would be a real value in us formalizing a K-12 grading philosophy that would really not only change our grading practices and provide clarity for teachers about what should and should not go into a grade, but also change assessment practices and think about how you can more broadly assess students where grades are more reflective of learning and less reflective of compliance. So we have a team that is reviewing scholarly research. They're looking at other school documents and other districts and private schools as well on grading philosophies. We're looking at our own grading policies and practices and making some policy recommendations. There's also a survey that we're going to be conducting of our own staff, just to get a sense of what some of our current grading practices and philosophies are. And as you might imagine, there's a lot of emotion and energy behind grading practices, from student perspectives to parent perspectives to teachers. So it makes sense for us to have a more of a unified approach to what does a grade mean. I know that sounds very deep, but it is. But it's exciting also when we think of that. From the Redefined Success, we have elementary report cards. So we are in year 2 of the elementary report card process, year 2 of 3. So last year we started our 4th grade elementary report card. We piloted the 4th grade and adopted that at the end of last year. That expanded to grades 3 and 5 this year. So we have 3, 4, and 5 this year that are both similar to what I was talking about grading, making sure the report card reference actually is reporting on learning. We've taken out some of the compliance language. It has an expanded narrative. You'll see the habits of minds much more much more included and embedded in the narrative for elementary report cards. And we've seen, especially our 4th grade teachers in year 2 of doing this, becoming much more adept at gathering evidence of learning along the way, of writing narrative along the way, where it's becoming more a part of the culture. Admittedly, there's a learning curve from shifting as the 3 and 5 teachers have joined, but they've been doing a wonderful job, and the narratives have been really rich. I'll be presenting next month's curriculum committee of the board about the K2 report card and what that will look like as we start that next year. And included with that, we'll share some examples of some of the narratives that have been written this year that I think will be helpful to give you a sense of what it looks like with the habits of mind from a parent perspective, and you'll see how those are embedded. And our final of the 9 focus explorations is the habits of mind, and that falls under our commitment to professional learning pathway. And as referenced in their being seen through the report card, that's simply the mechanism for how we're sharing students through the lens of habits of mind. But we've been really fortunate to have Dr. Benekalik join us multiple times through our strategic planning process. She helped us. She's one of the founders of Habits of Mind, and she has been with us to help us shape our transformative goals, to help us kind of come up with a plan for how the habits of mind can be more embedded in our program. Habits of mind are mental dispositions. They say they're mental dispositions that people draw upon when they're confronted with problems to which resolutions are not immediately apparent. So it's really a series of problem-solving strategies to help students become more and more adept at problem solving as they face this range of challenges. The teachers have received some training on habits of mind, and the language is being included in the narrative. But it's really an exciting thing for teachers to really dive into, because these are skills that everyone wants their own students to have. And I think of my own son, who's a senior this year in high school, and going through the stress, as many of you know, of the college application. You think about letters of recommendation and people talking about your child. These are like things that you want to hear people say about your own child. These are things you want for your own students, just like you'd want for all of our students. And they're really connected with effective problem solvers and students being happy. And Bennett talks about that in her work. When you have a habits of mind school, and that's part of your program, you're really helping students become independent thinkers and be more confident problem solvers. And there's a spirit of happiness when you focus on the habits of mind, because it thinks about the dispositions and not necessarily the result. So just to kind of share with you what an example of that would be. There's habits of mind, and there's cute ways to show the habits of mind and little animations that the students can see. But just as an example, the one about striving for accuracy, to share you an example of something that a teacher has done, is the teacher had a basket of in her room of eyeglasses that had the lenses that were out. So just eyeglasses frames. And as students were doing their writing, they would write, and then the teacher would ask the students, get your glasses, we're going to be striving for accuracy. And the students would go and they'd put on their glasses and they'd review their work. And so they would get in the habit of okay, once I've written work or I've done a math problem, I'm going to get my glasses and I'm going to review that again. And it kind of became a very natural part of of her classroom experience. So, you know, student, maybe they're working independently, rush up, they hand their paper in, the teacher, you know, points over to the glasses, the student remembers, gets the glasses and goes. And then you saw kind of students naturally doing that on their own. So it just, and then of course, eventually they're doing it without the glasses. So they're not adults still going to look for the glasses. But it's the idea of how you are kind of embedding these each of these dispositions into your day-to-day practice to make you a better problem solver. How are you thinking flexibly? You have students that as they're self-assessing, which is the goal with this, they're talking about, you know, I'm sorry, I had some trouble managing my impulsivity. You don't typically hear elementary students talk that way. When they do, you know you're talking about building a culture of habits of mind. So they're really things that you would wish for with any of your children. Of course, we want our students to respond with wonderment and awe to the world, to be creators, and to find humor in life. Things that we would all hope for. When those things are intentionally part of your program, you have a happier program. You have a happier child. And those focus explorations, those habits of mind were really connected to our transformative goals. Our transformative goals are worded a little, they're not quite as happily worded, but it's the same idea. We see a great deal of overlap of the habits of mind and our transformative goals. So that's our update on our focus explorations. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank you and your team. I think is Mike Johnson and Megan Schaefer, the lead of the strategic team. So it's really exciting to hear all of this and to hear the progress that's being made. I know that it was discussed in more detail in the curriculum committee, but you know, I think this is the kind of thing that I think most of us find actually really exciting and want to hear more about. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to present this to us. So is there any?
I just wanted to
Sure.
again remark. I appreciate the way Scott has drawn the multiple arrows with the heavier arrow showing the more direct. But it's a way to remind us that we're not operating in silos. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to take. I said this at the CCOB meeting, but I want to say it again for the public. I really want to express appreciation on behalf of the staff and administration to the board. We've gone out, was walking in a building earlier the year, and I was remarking about the bulletin boards around habits of mind, and somebody said, "Wow, the assistant principals in the elementary school have really caught on fire with this." So we got Bennett Kalick to come out and to have a nationally known person come out and talk to our folks like that is really makes an impact. Sean Hughes saw Dr. Howard at a meeting at Harrisburg, was very impressed with it, and the fact that we were able to bring him out to talk with about his restorative practices, that matters very much to us, and the board's support in doing that has mattered in the strategic plan that we've put forward.
Well, that's great. Glad to hear that. So I'll just open it up for questions or comments at this time. Deborah, go ahead.
Hello. I was at the CCOB meeting, and I was just going back through my notes. But, of course, hearing something again, it brings up just a couple questions, which I will just say, you know, as an educator, a former parent, an aunt to kids in the district, you know, I just think looking at these things is just really exciting. I just think it's amazing. I mean, I really do. But my three questions. One, are the students using the habits of mind when they are reflecting in their digital portfolios? So how are you working with students to tell their story? Is it just a progress, best work portfolio? Is it a process? So maybe pairing, I didn't study so well on this test, and I didn't strive for accuracy, and now in my next, I knew I needed to spend more time. So that's one, which I can stop and then you can answer, or I could continue.
Sure, I'll answer.
Okay.
So there's a lot of overlap with a lot of the explorations through the report card, habits of mind, challenge success. There's so much overlap. So the digital portfolios, because they're in the pilot phase, are being used very differently based on exactly where you are. And one of our plans, well, part of of next year's plan is there are some guidelines for use, and certainly the digital portfolio is a way for students to self-assess. Yes, through the Habits of Mind, part of their student-led conference at the end of the year. All of that is connected.
Great, thank you. Next, how are you finding the residencies? How are you publicizing the opportunity to the community and the larger community to engage these different partners?
So we compiled a list of all the field trips that all the different grades and all the different schools are currently going on. And then we looked for commonalities across grades that would lend themselves to expanding past a field trip experience into sort of this longer, deeper, year-long and beyond connection. And there were some organizations that began to stand out as a lot of different classes were going on the field trips or having interactions with those organizations. And so we approached them first. But we were also looking for organizations that had their own educational components that they could offer us, and also to provide diverse experiences throughout the city and the suburbs that these different organizations could expose our kids to. So it was a combination of their input, and then we reached out to a number of organizations, and for the most part, they got back in touch with us and were excited to partner with us.
Thank you. It's my last one. 3 is my favorite number. What role do detentions have in restorative practice?
Well, right now, detentions are part of our disciplinary code. They're part of 235, so that may be a recommendation as a result of this exploration. But I would say that restorative practices did not say that there are not consequences for students. There's a how. And so you can take students through a restorative process where they understand their role in a misbehavior. They make every effort to try to restore the relationship with those that may have been harmed by that relationship, and they still have a consequence. So I would argue that the restorative piece is much, much more important than the consequence piece. And so they currently exist side by side. What the future is, we'll see.
Thank you for the presentation. A quick question about just grading in general. I mean, what's your thoughts on, obviously grading is important for us to a certain degree to in-house, but obviously, unfortunately, the grading matters when our seniors are looking at colleges. So is there some college view and employer view looking in that we're getting to sense how grading can be to help us, meet the needs of students after they graduate from here?
Sure. I mean, grading is going to exist. We're not looking to replace grades. There are grading practices as far as what would contribute to that grade, and also teacher practices that can balance and honor process a little bit more than they do now. For example, when students receive a feedback and a grade on a paper, rarely is the feedback explored or considered because the grade is already there. But research would show that if the grade is absent and there is feedback, the feedback does help honor that process and allows students to continue to work towards a goal absent that grade. So there are teacher practices that can encourage process and value that more, that we want to really encourage.
Virginia? Yeah, I was just going to say with the residency and the partnerships, I think it's great that you're doing the African American History Museum and Barnes and things, but you have gold nuggets right here in Lower Marion in your own backyard. And so there are some things that they may be studying that they don't have to go all the way into Philadelphia to be able to expand their knowledge and to glean. So I'll talk to Amy.
We've reached out to some have returned our calls, others have not.
Okay.
I have a more comment than a question, but when we first finished the strategic plan, this particular one, it was very aspirational, and there was a sense of, great, how are you ever going to do any of this? It's just so high level, and it's just so much fun to actually see some of those aspirations being achieved, and the implementation of practical approaches to addressing some of those aspirations and those hopes. So, I just want to give kudos to you and to the staff and everyone who's been working on this to actually make this document a living, actionable document, not just, a wish list of high-level things. So just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, again, thank you very much for the presentation, but more importantly, for all the work that you're doing, so.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything else? Okay, at this time, we're going to have public comment or audience recognition on any issue. Please come to sign in with Ms. LaPera. I think you two know the drill, but tell us your name and where you're from generally. You can go ahead, Sam.
All right, so I'm Sam Catania. I live in Haverford. I'm a student at Harriton. Dr. Everslog, thank you so much for your presentation. It's great to see progress. Just one thing I wanted to talk about specifically on the K-12 grading philosophy page. I noticed that surveying teachers was a large part of it, and I just want to make sure that surveying students is equally a part of that process as well. I know for me that that grading reform and changing grading policy is of the utmost importance, and I think there's a lot of value to be had in hearing student voices. I'll just give a quick example. So, one of my favorite classes that I'm taking this year is economics, and it's partially due to a great teacher, but it's also due to some of the policies that they employ. And one of the policies that teacher employs is that on any test, you can do corrections on that test and get back 50% of the points that you lost. So if you were to have got, say you got a 50% on the test, that would be a pretty bad test. But if you got a 50% on the test, you go through the corrections process, which entails, filling out a form. You've got to reference specific textbook pages. You've got to explain why you got the answer wrong, demonstrate that you can do the problem correctly, and actually go in and talk to the teacher about the problem too. So there is a process, right? It's not just like you turn in a slip and then you get it. And you get 50% back, and I don't have, econ is not my, I'm doing well in it, right? But it's not that's not the class I have the highest grade in, but it's the class I feel the least stressed in. And I think what it's really done is emphasize that you don't necessarily have to have, grading center, you don't have to have grading centered around just making changes. There are real changes that legitimately do work. And encouraging learning and reducing stress is really of the utmost importance. So I'm happy to see the district pursuing this, and I hope that students are a part of the decision making.
Thank you, Sam.
Ruth Jenkin, Wynwood. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the legislative forum last Monday. Even though my question was not relevant, I found the information and frustration of our representatives quite timely. With regard to what was just said, I was going to talk about a book called Brave, Not Perfect. And it's similar to that idea that you don't have to be a super success at everything. You can have fun, and you can take a chance and do something that you're not good at, but you really like. And I think we have to take more of that approach that, You could love economics, even though you're not, doing, not 100%, that's not your passion, but you like it, and you would like to take a class in computers or music or singing. And I love to sing, and I'm a terrible singer, but I always joined the chorus, and they always put me over at the end, but I loved every minute of it. And every year when we have the Hallelujah Chorus at Christmas, the Christmas concert, I'm up on that stage, singing my heart out. But it's because I love it, not because I'm good at it. And I think we need to do a little bit more of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just in relation to Sam's comments, it was really the results of the Challenge for Success survey that pointed us hard in the direction of the homework, and it was the voice of students, and I know the principals are capitalizing on that, so you can be sure that'll happen.
Okay. I just want to read the upcoming meetings. We have a Finance Committee meeting on April 24th, which is going to focus on staff and IT. That'll be at 8:30 a.m. in this room, the boardroom. And then one facilities meeting on April 25th. And then April 29th is our next regular business board meeting at 8:00 p.m. in this room. And with that, we are adjourned, and everyone have a good evening.